I'm the extraordinary tourist, and I'm going to be looking at 4 artworks by UK artist Stuart Ridley. Stuart is an artist who paints and draws in a somewhat naive style. He's also a photographer whose photographs are very often spontaneous and in the moment snaps of ordinary everyday life. He is a self-taught artist who states that his goal is to create interesting artworks that go against the grain. With this in mind, let's look at 4 examples of his work. Dave, me Liverpoolian mate, is a photograph of a figure whom I presume is Dave, standing next to an expanse of water with a boat of some sort in the background. Looking at this picture, it's hard to see it as anything other than perhaps a family snap or a snapshot of a friend on a day out. How it goes against the grain is completely beyond me. I don't know Dave, I don't know anything about him, I don't know if he has any relationship with the boat in the background or the water or the location that he's standing in. As far as I'm concerned, this is a fairly good example of a spontaneous snapshot taken in the moment, and if it's actually a setup and that it's meant to mean something other than what it appears at face value, then whatever meaning it has is lost on me. The title, Dave, me Liverpoolian mate, pretty much says it all. It's a picture of Dave, who is a friend of Stuart. All you gave me for Christmas is a black eye, I forgive you, darling, is a photograph of a Christmas tree. It's a very good example of how a title can completely alter the meaning and the thoughts that you have on a fairly common everyday image. In fact, without the title, this photo could perhaps easily be sent as a Christmas card. It does, after all, depict your average Christmas tree that you might see in homes anywhere around the Western world where Christmas is celebrated. Looking closely at the photo, it's hard to say whether this is simply a snapshot with an interesting title added into it, or whether there has been some thought and perhaps the really dark red tinsel that circles the bottom of this tree has been added to perhaps emphasize the point about the black eye, perhaps redness that results from that. It's really hard to say. Certainly the red tinsel seems out of balance with the rest of the tree. It is really only the title that prompts you to think deeper about the image and perhaps the story behind it. Would this image be as powerful presented without the title? Probably not. In my opinion, Stuart's artwork, i.e. his paintings and drawings, are somewhat more interesting than his photographs. Because of their naive style and their seemingly adult subjects, there is a contrast between childlike drawings and more adult experiences. Market Escort depicts a bare-breasted woman sitting on a couch. The only thing that makes this work more interesting and perhaps closer to being against the grain is the drawing style. It suggests that it was drawn by a much younger person who perhaps shouldn't be exposed to this kind of nudity or even this kind of person. The woman in the painting doesn't actually look very much like an upmarket escort at all. The fact that she is sitting on a couch bare-chested suggests that perhaps she isn't as upmarket as the title suggests. Either way, the woman's expression seems distant and perhaps a little vacant. Her eyes don't really connect with people viewing the picture, and perhaps that says something about her profession, and perhaps as an escort she never really connects with her clients. Attractive Woman in My Studio depicts an orange-haired woman whose body is largely made up of just her own seemingly large breasts. Alongside her is what is obviously a pot plant, and above that some kind of dark box-like shape, which, as near as I can tell, could be anything from a safe to a radio or just a box to put things in. It's really hard to say. The work is painted in Stuart's naive style, which gives the impression that perhaps this work was painted by a much younger person, which makes this work slightly confronting, because it suggests again that this artwork is being painted by someone who perhaps shouldn't be exposed to this kind of nudity. Beyond that, I'm not really sure what this work is about, whether it is based upon an actual event or perhaps it's an imagined event. It's really hard to tell either way, and I'm pretty much just speculating. The box in the right hand corner of the painting, in the upper right, because I really don't know what that is, doesn't really have a lot of meaning for me when viewing the work. Why it's important as a part of this work, whether it has some relationship with the woman or whether it's just something that happened to be in the background whilst Stuart was painting the piece, is again unclear. The pot plant is probably more likely to have been something that was in the background, but again one could speculate that perhaps it has more importance than that. The work itself is dominated by the woman's breasts. Perhaps this was her most attractive feature. Certainly it's likely, considering that her chest is painted in a much lighter colour to her face, and her face and hair almost disappear into the artwork in comparison. Looking at the artwork a little closer, you can see that the woman only has eyes, and Stuart has not given her a nose or a mouth. Perhaps he's suggesting that her eyes were also one of her more attractive features. It's possible that this artwork is perhaps a personal piece for Stuart and has some meaning to him, but to me it's fairly unclear as to what it's about, and it's hard to really go beyond what you see at face value and what you get from the title, Attractive Woman in My Studio. My general feeling of Stuart's art is that individually the images are too personal, in that if you don't know the story behind them, they are really hard to connect with, and perhaps they have more meaning for Stuart than they do for a viewer like me who knows nothing about Stuart or his life. However, if you view Stuart's art as part of a collection of his work, then you start to get a feel for the kind of things that interest him and a little bit more of what he is about. His interest in the everyday is somewhat voyeuristic, particularly with his photographs, and in some ways that doesn't help his art or his imagery to be as strong as what it might, because everyday snapshot style images we see all the time, and the reason they're snapshots is because they are momentary and they really don't engage us for very long. Why then should it be any different when such images are put before us as art?